to the first episode of the Retro Rasslin Podcast. I'm your host, King of all wrestling media, Gene Jackson, and I'm pretty excited about this first episode. And I had a great interview with a guy named Lolly Lolly Griffin is his actual name, but he wrestled, refereed, and announced and promoted. Most people know him better as Lolly Dude. Some of the global wrestling fans may know him best as Francis Crybaby Buxton. And I've been looking forward to talking to him for a while. Of course, he was involved in the Deep South Wrestling promotion in 1995, which we've got a lot of matches from my tape trading days up here on the channel from Deep South. And we've got some more stuff to come from them. So I've been excited about talking to him about that, amongst other things. And so I did an interview, and that's what this first episode is. But I am going to warn you on the front end. There are some sound issues that weren't as obvious during the course of the show as they were in the aftermath of me, editing it together. So I apologize for some of the sound issues. Some of them are just, mildly annoying. At a couple of points, it is hard to understand Lolly and follow along, but they're not overwhelming. So I still want to put the interview up. Because it is a great interview. We talked about a lot of stuff from his career. He's got a ton of great stories. We're going to have him on again in the future to talk some more and probably do some watch-alongs of some old Deep South matches so he can give us kind of some insight and behind the scenes on some of the stuff that went on there, including the early days of the Disco Infernos, kind of one of his first promotions he worked for. And he talks a little bit about that in this interview, and we'll talk about it some more in the future. But again, just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. I know people are, sticklers for sound quality, and I try to be, but unfortunately there are some sound issues throughout this interview, but it was a good interview, and Lolly's not a guy that's done a bunch of these, so there's really not a lot of interviews of him out there. So I want to get this out there and let everybody check it out, but I do apologize for the audio issues, but a good interview nonetheless. And again, another guest that we'll be having back again here real soon on the new Retro Rasslin Podcast. So check it out. Let me know what you think, and let me know who you would like to see here in the future. Very excited to have my first guest. I've been looking to get this lined up for a while. Of course, most of you know, I live in Alabama now, but I grew up in Mississippi. That's where I grew up until I was 20 years old. That's where I broke into the wrestling business back in 1997. And the gentleman I'm going to talk to this morning has a big history in professional wrestling in Mississippi. I'm pretty excited to talk to him about it, see if he knows some of the same people I do. I'm pretty sure he does. But right now, I'm fixing to bring him on. You may know him as Lolly Dude. You may also know him as Crybaby Francis Buxton from the Global Wrestling Federation. But if you don't know him, you're about to get ready to get to know him right now. So let's welcome right now Lolly Dude. Dude, how you doing, brother?
Hey, hi, man. This is good. Good to see you.
You too, man. Like I say, this is our first time talking, but I grew up in the state of Mississippi and was a wrestling fan I'm 46 years old right now. I was a wrestling fan from when I was just as long ago as I can remember, and I got into the wrestling business around 1997, but I remember seeing you on TV. I remember seeing your name on wrestling posters, throughout the state as I would travel around. And I'm curious, what year did you break into the business?
Well, I kind of started when I was finishing college. I was at Louisiana College in Pineville, which was Alexandria, right in the middle of Louisiana. And most of the Mid-South UWF guys lived in Alexandria. That was kind of the middle of the territory. New Orleans, South, Jackson, up to Tulsa, Oklahoma City kind of thing. So Alexandria seemed to be kind of the hotbed. Well, I was on the radio, doing the morning show, and all the guys listened to me. And when I would get off at 10, I would go to the gym. Well, they all went to the same gym. And before you knew it, I became friends with a lot of them, and just kind of hung out, and I just kind of hung out and rode with them and got an education, and just kind of waited my chance. And all of a sudden, I had a chance to do some stuff, I quickly realized that, the best way for me to do it is to do my own thing as much as possible because, to go get your brains beat in for 25, 50, $100, I'd rather make a couple bucks and pay everybody 25, 50, or $100. So I quickly realized I had a lot of media already in me, being radio and TV at that time. So I kind of started trying to position myself to be able to do more than just wrestle. But back when I first started, a very, very smart man, Terry Taylor, said, "You're never going to be a good wrestler, but you've got media talent. Don't try to make your living in wrestling. Use wrestling to make your living." And I kind of thought about that, and that's kind of how I tried to kept trying to produce TV shows and go that way. I had the crybaby gimmick and all that, but my when I would get through it in the ring or going to any event, I would go to the truck. When I was at World Class at Global, I would go out. It wasn't a truck; it was a band.
Right.
But I would go and stand and watch and learn because that's helped me since wrestling. By the time I was beat up and couldn't do it anymore, I had a vast knowledge of TV production. So I was able to immediately get a job doing, college sports. And that's what I've been doing for the last, 20, 25 years is pretty much nothing but, college sports, basketball, football, baseball, softball, and all that. I can direct, I can produce, I can run the scorebug, I can run a camera, I can run cable, I can, I learned how to do every job, which is what I did in wrestling. I learned how to sell tickets. I learned how to set up the ring. I learned how to referee. I learned how to wrestle. I learned how to ring announce. I learned how to commentate. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I learned every facet. I mean, there were many nights that I was in my wrestling boots sitting at a ticket window somewhere in Mississippi or Louisiana selling tickets. Right. and then running to the dressing room, and then at the intermission, when I sign an autograph, I'm in there getting popcorn and hot dogs. Signing the autograph. So right. I kind of, I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed being around the guys. I was so lucky that in that beginning in Alexandria, Terry Taylor was there, the fantastic Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, Dr. Steve Williams. We all became good friends. I mean, Doc and I ended up spending a lot of time together in Hawaii. He had a place out there. Tommy Rogers turned out to be, probably one of the best friends I've ever had in my life. God rest his soul. And he ended up out in Hawaii with me. And we just had, I was just so lucky, dude. I say I'm the worst wrestler in history that ever made a living in wrestling. When I started that crybaby thing, when I went to, this is a great story. I went to Dallas. Manny Fernandez and Akbar had called me and wanted me to come and talk about being the announcer. I don't know if they were. I don't know what the deal was. Doyle King was out there. I never really got the story, but I brought a suit, and I'm going to go, and they were going to make me a commentator. And I walked in and sat down for the little meeting, and the guy that owned it looked at me. He goes, "Can you wrestle?" And I said, "Well, I can do anything you want me to do." He said, "Well, I got this idea." I said, "Okay." And now, granted, here a month or two before this, I'm in Europe refereeing and hanging with Jake the Snake, and he kept telling me, "Man, if you want to wrestle, you need to be a crybaby. You need to be the biggest wussy ever, and when it's time to get heat, get your heat." Okay, it just stayed in my mind. So I'm talking to Akbar, Manny's in there, and this guy Gray Pearson, and Gray goes, "Man, I've got this idea. You ever saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "You remember the big wuss Francis Buxton with the bike?" Yeah. He goes, "That's what I want. I want a crybaby. I want somebody is just, how do you put it? I want you to do everything that you've been taught wrong. I want you to look like you're dying every second you're in the ring. Every time the camera's on you, you need to look like you're 1 second away from death. When you take a bump, take the bump all goofy. Don't take it like everybody else. When you need to get up, grab the ropes and pull yourself up like you're fixing to die. And okay. And so I got to thinking about it. Well, I started watching some midget stuff, and I said, well, I just steal the midget spots and just kind of do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how that happens, And it was hilarious. A lot of the guys your age that watched it back in the 90s, they love it. They laugh at me now and said, how much fun they had. And that was it. It was the whole gimmick. I looked like I was dying every second, every interview. I mean, it was so stupid, but hey, what the heck? I had a good time and, had a good gimmick, and it was fun. I got to do a lot of work, but the majority of my stuff was promoting. And then really my best wrestling stuff was refereeing. I was so lucky to go across to Europe and, different countries on these big tours wrestling. I went on a couple of tours to Europe and just all over across the country. Hillbilly Cousin Luke was a good friend of mine, and he got me hooked up. And we went on multiple cross-country tours, like the original Sheik, and oh my gosh, Wendy Richter and Sergeant Slaughter and Hillbilly Cousin Luke and Snuka and Valentine and all the older guys, and it was so much fun. Now I gotta tell you, you haven't lived until you've been in the ring with Abdullah the Butcher and the original Sheik.
Oh wow! The
very first night they hit the ring, right? Of course, immediately are pulling out sparks and knives and all kinds of stuff, and they back in the corner, go, "Come here, break us up." So I go through, to break them up, and they're kind of, they're popping me as I go through. And they go back into the corner again and break us up, ref, break us up. I break them up. And then they go through again. They break us up, ref. And by that time, I started, like, a little piece of blood started coming in my head. Every time I'm going in between, they had their gimmick. They were gassing me in the corner on the side of my head. They got me good, man. I was dripping blood and everything. And after it was over, I was in the back, and I said, man, this was great. Down here, I'm an idiot. They didn't rip me off. I'm thinking, thank you, man. This was great. And I said, Abby, will you take a picture with me? And he looked at me and went, rah. And I gave Cousin Luke my camera. And what I did, I kind of was putting my arm around him like to take a picture with him. Man, he grabbed me by the throat. And I thought he was going to kill me. And went, and they took the picture. And they let me go and I could breathe again. But it was, I just was so lucky, dude. I'm just a little old boy from funky Louisiana that got to see the world on somebody else's dime.
Man, that's good stuff. That's a who's who of wrestling that you just named off, that you worked with on those tours. Like,
I know. That's what I'm saying, dude. I was in the ring with the original Sheik and Abdullah for like 2 weeks, night after night. I got beat in the head and the back with a big manure shovel in Gary, Indiana by Abdullah the Butcher. He hit me so hard in the back, I thought I was going to die. He was like, hey, ref, get ready for a bump. And I thought he was going to. And he picks up this big, we're like in this Gary, Indiana Coliseum event center or something. It had they had just had a rodeo with like stalls, those portable stalls around the side. And he and the Sheik go out and start brawling. So I have to follow him, trying to get, and he picks up this, not a regular shovel, that big wide manure shovel, I call it, from back in the day of having horses. Man, he hit the Sheik 4 or 5 times with that thing. I was like, oh Lord. And he said, ref, get ready. I'm thinking, is he really fixing to hit me? And I started to turn, and he walked. And that was probably one of the first big, wow, this really is real. Because you wouldn't believe what they had on their hands. Those guys, it was like hatchets. Everywhere you looked on their hands. It was amazing that nobody died.
And you really got to love wrestling like folks like us do, because I'm sure you've told those stories to people since you've been involved in sports, and to them, hearing about getting cut up by Abdullah the Butcher and the Sheik and getting hit with shovel sounds like a nightmare, and you're laughing, talking about how great it is. I'm sure they can't wrap their head around that. Like, oh my God, that's terrible. I'm glad you got out of it. And you're like, are you crazy? It was the greatest time of my life,
Yeah, that was it. It's just because once you understand the business and what it takes to, one of the first lessons I learned was red means green.
Actually, yeah.
So, and it's a shame that now when you get that, it gets crime and stuff, but it was more real. You didn't have to do all this crazy stuff. I mean, it was like a real fight. You get hit in the head and, you start bleeding. You get in a real fight and somebody starts beating the crap out of your head's going to bust open.
Oh, yeah.
And, they do all these big moves today, which, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, a lot of it is incredible athletic ability, but the realism, that they do 18 of these death moves and then they pin them with a arm drag or so, you know what I mean? It's just the psychology, and back then everything was such psychology. You didn't have to do that to get the pop. And they spoil the fans now. It's a different world. I watch it some now, and I go, wow, man, these guys are talented. But as far as the psychology, it's just a different world. And I think that's what separates the older wrestling fans from the newer ones, because those people, the younger people from, say, by the time the Austin era and the Rock kind of started,
Yeah.
they still had psychologists, but that's when it started changing. So I go pre Stone Cold, back when, you knew how to take a headlock and you knew how to give an arm drag and the things you don't see anymore. You actually had to wrestle. And that's what I miss, because I used to love as a kid to go and see a 10-minute wrestling Broadway where they never threw a punch, they never threw a kick, they never did anything. And then, boom, 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 boom. And then at the very end, one of them would take a cheap shot and get a pin, just like a real fight,
Yeah, and it was a different mindset then, because I'm sure you're watching that as a kid, and you're invested. And when it goes to the 10-minute draw, you're like, oh, man, I thought he had it. I really thought he was going to go on. Where today's fan goes, why did they book it like that? Why didn't they have somebody go over? And it's just like the whole mindset of it's just
they're too quick in angles. Everything's rushed because our psyche is immediate gratification. And back in the day, the Bill Watts era, the Jerry Jarrett era, the Fritz von Ken Mantell, they would stretch it out. It's like every Tuesday night in Alexandria, Louisiana. I lived in Bunkie. Alexandria's 30 minutes up the road. We would go to the wrestling. My dad would take me. And, they would start angles. Like Jim Duggan and Buzz Sawyer were the main event for about 11 weeks. They started out with just a match.
Right.
And then, they'd have something, and then they had a rematch, and boom, 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 and they built up to a chain match and a brass knucks match, and, what I'm saying? Then finally a loser leaves town. And they worked that over the course of a few months, 3, 4, 5 months. These things would go on, and you would get invested in the angle. And even back in the day where, you didn't, where I lived in Bunkie, I could get Monroe TV on my antenna, Alexandria TV, Lafayette, and Baton Rouge. Well, it was the same show with different interviews talking about Baton Rouge or talking about Alexandria, but it was the same matches. And even Lake Charles. And I could, well, why would they do that in Lake Charles, the same match the next night?
Yeah.
Why does the title ever change? And all those, and I would go. There was a time, once I got my license, I had a buddy, Hollywood Harrison, a great DJ, God rest his soul, and we would go. We'd drive to Lake Charles. We'd drive to Lafayette. We'd drive to Baton Rouge after we saw the same matches in Alexandria 2 nights before. And it'd be the exact same thing, but we focused. We didn't worry about. I mean, it was like, oh, man. It was just so good. Yeah. They were so entertaining, and the guys, they were real people. Like now, I don't understand how you can be a heel and get heat, and you're out waving with the kids, taking pictures. Man, if I had to go to Buck Robley or Bruiser Bob Sweetan or Stan Hansen or Bruiser or Frank Goodish, man, they'd have knocked you out. The heels didn't go out and sign autographs or take. Man, they lived their gimmick. The only time they were nice was when they were in the Waffle House and didn't want people spitting in their food.
Right. Yeah. I
you
mean,
know, or,
that.
or, or, or like Jim Cornette would talk about driving through Mid South, he had to stay in the car. Bobby and them have to go in the store. Somebody kill him.
Oh yeah. I
You
mean,
talk
because
about heat, brother. He had heat.
you didn't have people trying to be the cool heels like they do now, or they didn't want people to like them, and that's what I love. Like when you were talking about like the Francis Buxton character, like that wasn't going to turn into a cool heel. Like people found him entertaining, yeah, but like nobody's going to get behind the crybaby. Nobody's going to go to school and be like, "Hey, my favorite wrestler's a crybaby. Boy, I love when he loses the match and he cries and he can't get up off the mat." It's the
Yeah,
perfect heel, that people are going to be against that guy. And so
yeah.
you
I'll
weren't
give
worried
you a
about being
good.
cool.
I'll give you a really good example. We were doing Deep South Wrestling. We had a deal with the Silver Star Casino, and I had a deal with the guys at a TV station in Jackson, and I made a deal with the chief of the tribe that owned the casino, and we were going to do a TV show. Well, Hillbilly Cousin Luke was here, so he was helping me, and Terry Taylor,
Hmm.
who I know a lot of people. Jim Cornette's one of the great minds, in my opinion. But Bobby Fulton would be another one that's just an incredible mind. Tommy was my buddy, but Bobby was a different cat. He was full of the history and this, that, and the other. And then Terry Taylor had such great psychology. He would say, "Well, why are we doing that?" And we would have all these different thoughts, and his everything needed to matter. Every move, everything, not don't waste it. And as we started, he goes, "Man, I've got this kid, and he's got a future. He's just a great heel, a great chicken shit heel," as a way to talk about it. And
Yeah.
it was Disco Inferno, Glenn. And he brings Disco over, and we beat him every week on TV. We beat him every week, and he kept his heat. He would get one of the biggest pops of the night everywhere we went because although he would get beat, you know what I'm saying? When it was over, that people they were so happy he got beat, and they still wanted to see him get beat the next time
Right.
instead of So you we tried to build every character to mean something. Enhancement talent, so to speak. I never understood. I mean, what I understand getting guys over to a point, but it's like LSU playing Mississippi College. I mean, you beat somebody 150-0. Whoopie do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make Mississippi College look good. You know what I'm saying? Make whoever you're wrestling. Ric Flair was like that. Everybody he wrestled in every territory for the belt. What did he do? He looked like he was fixing to lose every time. Every time.
Yeah.
He never went out and squash matches. I can't remember. I just remember all the matches where they got him rolling, man. He'd go to the territory and wrestle Terry Taylor in Mid-South or Duggan, and they'd have him right at the brink of death. And then Flair gets disqualified, or they do a dust, and it's just it was just such a different world. And now, the guys like us, my age, that are older than you and stuff, we remember those days, and I just and we're still fans. Like I watch the old stuff now, and it still holds up to me. And I just wonder if, like all those Austin kids and the Rock kids, they've all they're still hardcore people. I'm not saying, but all those millions of people that were watching Monday Night Raw have moved on from wrestling. And now, in 20 years from now, how many of these guys wrestling today will be big? You know what I'm saying?
See, I
I
don't
mean, how
think they
many Ric
will
Flairs
because,
will there
like,
be?
I watched the Austin Attitude Era stuff in college, and I loved it in college. But like now, when I go
Oh
back
yeah,
to watch wrestling, I watch stuff from the '80s and '90s, like on the channel that this interview is going to air on, Retro Rasslin Network. We have some of the Deep South wrestling you were just talking about on this channel. That's a lot of the reason I reached out to you and wanted to talk to you. We've got a lot of the early Disco Inferno matches on there because I used to tape trade real big. And I dug out some of those tapes and started putting some of those matches up on the channel. So folks watching this, some of the stuff that dude's talking about, you can go on there and watch the early matches of Disco Inferno. Terry Taylor and the Dr. Feelgood angle, that's on there. Cousin Luke, a lot of great stuff. And I love going back and watching that. I mean, I try to go back and watch the Attitude Era stuff, and there's some good promos and stuff, but to me, it just doesn't hold up. Like, I just don't. I don't feel a love for it like I do watching the old wrestling, especially like Mid-South, UWF,
Yeah, well,
Memphis. Oh my gosh, all that.
let me be crude for a minute here.
All right.
It used to be a movie. You would start the movie, you would set the stage, you would have a protagonist, an antagonist, all those things. You would have ups and downs, and then you would have the conclusion of the movie. Well, porno, they pretty much get right to it. You know what I'm saying? And it's one money shot after another these days. It's boom, money shot, pull out, money shot. Yeah. And there's no patience to build characters and angles. And these people are characters. When Vince said, we're not wrestlers anymore, we're superstars. That's great. But, take an armbar, take a headlock, do it's wrestling. And again, I guess you would do, metal music. If it's too loud, you're too old. I don't want to say I'm too old, but I think the earlier stuff holds up. And as we get old and die, we're going to remember the Junkyard Dogs and the Rock and Roll Expresses and the Ric Flairs and the Dusties and the Terry Funks and all those people before we're going to remember the more. I mean, that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. In 20 or 30 years, nobody will know the Sheamuses, but I guarantee you they'll go back and be studying Ric Flair. They'll watch Jim Duggan. They'll be watching Mid-South and seeing world class. Oh, my gosh. The Von Erichs. That movie's fixing to come out, by the way. So that I can't wait to see that. My buddy Cassidy Riley's in it, and James Beard. So, matter of fact, I'm going to go tonight. I'm going to go to Monroe and go watch it with Cassidy and his family. He's one of my all-time favorites. He's probably really the only. I've only smartened up a couple people in history. It just happened. And I'll give you a great story because if you watch Deep South, you probably remember the Southern Championship, the one after that, that we did. And I had the same deal with the TV station, but we had a backer. And anyway, we were at the Monroe Civic Center, and the security guys, man, this guy wants to see you. And his name was Cedric Crane, Big Ced, big muscle guy. And he came in, I want to be a wrestler, right. Good looking kid, everything. And he goes, man, I've got a band, and here's my CD, and I want to be a wrestler. Well, you know how many times you hear that? 18 million, right? Oh, yeah, kid, all right, thank you very much. I took his CD, threw it in my bag, And a couple weeks later, I'm riding and doing something in the backseat on the floor, and it was nighttime. I couldn't get a radio station, and I put the CD in. Or I think it was a CD, and I put it in. I was like, man, this isn't bad. And we went back to Monroe, and he shows up. He goes, man, I want to be a wrestler, and I got these friends, and we've been practicing, and we can do all this, and blah, 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 blah. I said, you can, huh? I said, okay, well, I like your stuff. Tell you what, get your friends and be back here 30 minutes. And he came back, and I got Tommy Rogers and Terry Taylor, and they went out to the ring in Monroe with Big Cedric, who became the Ced Man, the Mighty Ced Man, and then a guy, Big Scott, who we call Big Country with Cousin Luke eventually, who's like 7 foot tall, great big dude. Yeah. And then Cassidy, who was small, muscular, Rock and Roll Express kind of looking, fantastic. But, he looked like he was 12. He was, 19 or 20, but he looked 10 or 12. He had that baby face. And they got in the ring, and with like 25 or 30 seconds, Tommy's doing stuff with him, and Terry comes over, and goes through the ropes. He goes, Lolly. I don't know about the two muscle heads, but the midgets got it. And Cassidy ended up just, he had a great career in the NWA and won belts and traveled the world. And now he's in the Von Erich movie. And, there's an example. If you don't know Hot Shot Cassidy, or now he's the MVP, he's retired now. But, so many of us don't do it right. So many of us, do the dope and do all the different things and don't have any money and but Cassidy, I gave him that same advice about don't try to make a living in wrestling. Use the wrestling to get where you want to be in life.
Yeah.
And, the whole time he wrestled, he went to school. He became not only a nurse, one of those big time nurses, like he puts ports in and he's one of the only people in Monroe that can do it. He makes great money. He's got a beautiful wife, beautiful children. He's not beat up. You know what I'm saying? He's mid-40s. And, he got a part in the Von Erich movie. Now he's doing stunt work. And, before you know it, he's probably going to be in a few movies because he's the perfect size. He's, like Zac Efron, and those guys are, they're midgets.
Yeah.
All right. So you can't bring in a Hacksaw Jim Duggan or somebody to work with us, but Cassidy, is small in stature and thick. So against the Zac Efron or those kind of guys, he looks like an animal. You know what I mean? He looks huge. And so he's going to be perfect in the Hollywood, in the entertainment, because all those actor guys are a little bit, and you got to have the right heavy. He'll be a perfect guy. And he used wrestling to get his degree, to get his home, to get his job, to take care of his family. And now he's going to be able to use wrestling ability to go on in the movie business and TV.
He's a good guy.
And that's the thing.
I used to do shows with him like around 98, 99 over around Jackson for Big Don Brody and up around Nashville and different places.
Big Don Brody.
He's a good dude.
There's another one, Noble. That's his real name is Noble. and he came to Southern Championship, and dude, he's one of those guys. There's the classic kind of guy. Man, Noble never went to a gym. No, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't a gym guy, but he could take anybody in the gym. He didn't have to beat up weights to be tough. He was country strong, cock strong that you can't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You can go to the gym all you want, but you ain't ever going to be cock strong, country strong like Big Don Brody. It's like Bruiser Brody. Those kind of guys are just that. They're cock strong. I don't know how to put it any other way. They're tough.
I used to watch Brody powerbomb J.D. McKay through tables like he was a dish rag.
Yeah, on that Southern Championship, he did a match with Cassidy, and for like 2 weeks in a row, Cassidy got powerbombed by Herc and Hercules Hernandez. The next week, Big Don Brody did it, but I think he did it more like I think he came off like the second rope with him or something. It was like, holy cow. He picked him up like a rag doll, though. It was great. Big Don Brody, man. It's been a few years, man. I need to check with him and see how he is.
Yeah, I would love to track him down and talk to him sometime, too, because he's got a lot of stories to tell. And I know he's one. He went to one of those NWA anniversary shows, and he wrestled Abdullah. And he came back and was telling us the story of that. And even Big Brody fell victim to Abdullah the Butcher. So.
Yeah, you didn't. Everybody fell victim to Abdullah. He just, when he was a different kind of cat. He was very reserved, and like you'd see him in the hotels, and he had his collared shirts with his monogram, Mr. AB, and having his cigar, and he was all drinking his little, he was very cultured, so to speak. But man, when he became the madman of the Sudan, bro, he started with the Sheik. He started up in Detroit, and that Larry Shreve, I think he started setting up the ring and this, that, and the other, and copied the Sheik gimmick and became the madman of the Sudan. And my gosh, I've watched stuff of him in Japan. And he parts the crowd like the Red Sea. Man, he comes through and it's like Brody or or King Curtis. There's another one. I lived for years and years in Hawaii, and the reason I stayed there was because of King Curtis. Throughout my wrestling, you'd always hear, man, till you meet the king, you got to meet the king. You got to meet the king. And I had a layover, and I was going to lay over in Hawaii, and I had a couple of the boys, get in touch with King and say, you need to meet this guy. And I landed and went to watch King, went to the beach and met him and got in his van. And he said, brother, stick out your tongue. And 2 days later, I'd had an education. And I ended up, I called my wife and said, we're moving. And I ended up packing my stuff and moved. I had 14, 15 years with King Curtis every day.
Wow.
I'd go up and we'd visit and talk. And when, from Ivan Koloff to Mad Dog Vachon and Butcher Vachon, Red Bastide, Adon LKC, who was Billy White Wolf in Hawaii. And I mean, all these guys made yearly pilgrimages out there. And to sit with a Red Bastide or Mad Dog Vachon and Curtis and sitting out there just listening. I never opened my mouth, dude. I mean, that was the first thing I learned in the business was shake everybody's hand, keep your mouth shut unless somebody talks to you. And man, just again, I still get here. I can't believe how lucky to have that kind of education. I guess they must have liked me. I am a fun guy. I'm just a dumbass,
So, you broke into the business at a time when it was still very protected. Like now, we talked about this before we started recording. Like now, if somebody gets a whim, hey, I want to be a wrestler. By the end of the week, you could be a wrestler. And if you got enough cash, you could be the champion of, said promotion.
Yeah, I mean, there's a federation close that, they charge you like $3,000. They take you to a tryout and, they have a finance company sitting right there. Everybody that gets in the ring and pays for the tryout, man, I think you have talent. I think, we're going to put you in the class. I think you got it. And then they get out the ring and they sign that finance note. And 5-6 weeks later, they get a certificate saying they're a professional wrestler.
So I'm assuming nowhere in your house, there's not a certificate hanging anywhere that says that you're a certified wrestler or announcer or referee or. So you came in at a time where you had to earn your way in. Like, how hard was that to kind of, earn people's trust and convince them, like, hey, I deserve to be involved in this?
Well, I think maybe I was a little bit lucky because I was in radio doing the morning show on the popular station at the time that they were all around. And at the gym, Ricky Ferrara, who was Igor Putsky, had a big gym in Pineville, right across the river from Alexandria, and all the boys worked out there. I remember when Warrior and Sting came in for the first time, but Doc and Tommy and Bobby and Terry and everybody that was hurt, everybody worked out at Ricky's. So I would be there. I became friends with them, but I became friends with the top guys. I didn't come in a class with the under guys and work my way up. I kind of came in riding, I'd show up to the building with Tommy and Bobby or Terry or those guys, or ride with Doc. And, all the bottom guys, they're like, who is this one? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? And about the time that things were starting to change a little bit with the UWF, I moved to Jackson, Mississippi to Z106 and, popped up really big. Well, the first time they came to town, all these girls were hanging out at the hotel where Terry and I come in and they, well, who is he? Who is this? And Terry goes, this is my little brother. Wow. Okay. And so all of a sudden I'm Terry's little brother and all these little jabroni promoters are calling me. Okay. I'm easy. And I just kind of, just got in. And I mean, I kept telling Tommy and Bobby, I want to be a wrestler, help me out, blah, blah, blah. Because Terry wasn't good. Terry, always said his job isn't to smarten people up. And I respected that. But we were good friends. And Tommy and Bobby, and finally they said, okay. So I'd flown over to Dallas to try to, hang with them and go and do and this, that, and the other. And they took me into the sportatorium one afternoon at 2, 3 o'clock, and Tommy suplexed me about 17 times straight. And he said, and I'm laying there going, doing my Buxton, look like I'm fixing to die. Because back then, it was not a Tempur-Pedic mattress on the ring. And I say this, if guys like Tommy Rogers and those guys would have a Tempur-Pedic mattress on the ring, they're more ring. I mean, I have a laminated floor here underneath me. You just as soon take the bump on a floor, because it was a hard floor with a piece of canvas taped over. There was no padding underneath it, no give. There was no bounce. There was no nothing.
Right.
And I did it, got in the car with him, and what, you still want to be a wrestler? Oh, no. The next day we were going to, let's get in the ring again. And he showed me how to lock up. Okay. And it was just kind of, but they never smartened up anything.
Yeah.
And finally, we were in Mississippi. I mean, I knew what was up, but I wasn't smart enough. It's complete. I still, I still wasn't in the back listening to finishes and this, that, and the other. I'd ride with them and I'd say hey to everybody. And I'd go sit right outside and, visit. I could go in, but I didn't see. In most places, the heels were in one side, the babies were in the other, and the ref would go in between anyway. So it didn't really matter. And it just kind of took off. I mean, after, we were on a trip, and then we were in a car, and it was me and Tommy and Bobby and John Keaton, great referee. He was the other referee with James Beard, and a great guy. And we're riding, and I'm asking all these questions, and Bobby was in the front seat. And he turned around, and I was sitting behind the driver. Tommy was driving. And Bobby turned around, looked at me, and he said, just ask me. Just ask me anything you want. Just ask me. And I kind of started asking some questions. And they smartened me up right there and said, we're going to try to figure out, because I wrestled, but I had to have the gimmick. I did all other kinds of things and this, that, and the other. I was a pretty good referee, terrible wrestler, pretty good referee, pretty good on the mic. And I had that. I learned that psychology from watching World Class and Mid-South, because everything meant something. I see guys now, they're doing all this stuff. Man, back in the day, you grab them. And, you got people up in the top of the building, and they can't see all that quick crap. You gotta take your time. You gotta grab them, hold them, and let them see. Boom, make it count. The things, and I soaked it up. I just soaked it up, and just had the chance, and there it went, man. It was such a good life to go and do. I mean, bro, my favorite wrestler as a kid was Mr. Wrestling 2. Oh my gosh, Mr. Wrestling 2. So I'm in Dallas with Tommy and Bobby. Tommy, break in over there a little bit and do some different stuff. And they have a gig in Little Rock for Buck Roadley. Well, Tommy's wife worked for Southwest. Buck had sent him plane tickets. And so Tommy said, well, let's go. I'm going to get you in with Buck. And we'll see, because Buck was another great wrestling mind. Crazy son of a bitch, but a great wrestling mind. And so Tommy flew on the Southwest plane for free, and I took his ticket and flew with Bobby. And we go to Little Rock. Man, it was a big car. Oh, every kind of big star was there at the War Memorial Coliseum in Little Rock for Buck. He had a mark. He was trying to get a TV going. And so I went and met Buck. He didn't have anything for me then, but they let me. He assumed I was smart. Tommy and them, I came with them. And so Mr. Wrestling 2 is on the card, bro. And I'm about to tear up. So I go in the dressing room, and there he is. And hello, sir. My name is Lolly Griffin. And so I just sat in that dressing room, and I'm just watching him. He had his gimmick on the whole time. He never saw anything.
Yeah.
And I'm just, oh man, unbelievable, right? And so after the matches, Tommy, after they finished, they were going to leave to go to the hotel. And I will say, Mr. Wrestling knew the next match. So he's in the main event, the last match, everything. He comes back in. I'm the only one left in that dressing room. I'm sitting there. I'm just looking at him like, oh God, he's going to take his mask off and get in the shower. Oh my God. Oh. And so, dude, it was so classic. He did his thing. He took his, laced his boot, one lace time, like very slow. Boom. He, took his lights off. And so he's sitting there butt naked now, and he's got his, he's sitting in a chair, he's butt naked, and he's still got his mask on. And so he's looking at me. Now I know. I'll tell you at the end in a minute. But he real care. I mean, like slowly, like working the program for me.
Yeah.
He, boom, and he unties a lace and another lace. It took him like 8 or 9 minutes to take the mask off. He's working it, and he goes, and he goes, boom, and he got another mask on underneath. And so I'm like, oh, and you can. Okay, and so he starts doing that, and okay, and you can see me. Boom! He got underneath that, and he got up butt naked with an under mask on, and went to the shower, and showered, and came back, got dressed, and left in that mask. And I was like, wow. So let's fast forward 20 years. I'm with Curtis in Hawaii. Well, Johnny Walker lived in Hawaii. Johnny Walker is a friend of Curtis.
Right.
So Johnny Walker comes to Curtis's house, and we're sitting on the lanai, and everybody's hanging out, and I'm, it's Johnny Walker, Mr. Wrestling. I'm looking at him, seeing his face to that, and he goes, "You look real familiar to me." I said, "Well, I met you. You're last, because that was his last week in the business. That's what he was getting old, and that was it." And I said, your last week in the business was my actual very first week in the business, and I met you in Little Rock, and you saw that light kind of click on. He said, "Oh yeah, you were that kid in the dressing room, weren't you?" Ha ha ha! He's laughing, and he remembered, and he knew why I was sitting there when he came back from the ring, because I've been sitting there looking at him, the whole time with the Google eyes, like, "Oh my God, my hero! Oh my God!"
Yeah.
So he knew the whole time, and he worked me. I mean, he wound me up like a watch, bro, and then poof, sprung it. I was, but he remembered that, and that was just so cool.
Nice.
One of my most cherished possessions is I've got a great picture of me and him together without his mask and everything, and that's one of those things I cherish deeply. Is that.
That's super awesome. So Tommy Rogers, like I have long said, I want to see if you'll back me up on this. I have always believed that if Tommy Rogers was a little bit bigger, he would have been like a Ricky Steamboat level superstar babyface in the business. The only thing that hurt him was just his size. Because man, what a worker! I mean, just one of the best.
Yeah, and Tommy and Bobby. It's like Ricky and Robert rock and roll. You need a yin and a yang. You need a Bobby and a Dennis Condrey. You need a contrast. And Tommy, there are different players on the team. Tommy was the workhorse, so to speak. Tommy was the one. Not that I want to say Bobby's an incredible worker and super smart. But Tommy was one that would do the big bumps and stuff. Bobby did. They all did them. But I'm just saying, Tommy was a different kind of cat. And as a person, see, Tommy, he was one of those that he didn't care about the business end or any of that. That's thank goodness he had Bobby. You know what I'm saying? Because Bobby handled it. Tommy just wanted to wrestle, and got his payoff, and he didn't question. He didn't care. He was wrestling and traveling and everything else. So, he wasn't as into the psychology of it like a Bobby Fulton. Bobby Fulton, I don't think Bobby Fulton was a great athlete in high school and college. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying he wasn't.
No, I mean,
a superb. Tommy was a super athlete in high school and college. I think he even played at Southern Miss for a year or two. And, so he was a tremendous athlete. And he showed that in the ring. His drop kick, even today, you showed me a better drop kick. And you're right. If he would have had, if he'd have been, 6'1", 6'2", oh, bro, think about what he and Ricky Steamboat could have done in the ring together.
I could see him having that match with Savage in Detroit. Like just as well as Steamboat
did. Yeah. It's Ricky and Robert, man. Both of those guys they're so if they would have been big, but they knew what their limitations were. The promoters figured it out. You know what I'm saying? So, and when they would split them up and put them in a match, they could, if they got beat, it was no big deal if they had to wrestle somebody big. When we were doing Southern Championship, and here's how lucky I am. I had all guys because breaking in and hanging out with the big guys. Well, Terry would come and do things for me. Tommy would come and do things for me. Stan Hansen came and did stuff for me. All these guys. And Tommy, when I was starting Southern Championship, we were going to try to get the younger guys over. That was the whole thing, was to use the Hercs and the Tommies and get the Cedrics and the Cassidys over. We had Marcus Dupree and everything, and we were going to try to use those guys. And I just always remember one of the things of riding down the road with Bobby Fulton, talking that psychology and everything. And he said, the most important thing at a wrestling match is the first match and the last match. Everything in between, blurred. But that first thing they see and that last thing they see. And that always makes sense to me. And every time I ever did a card, I put my two best matches first and last.
Yep.
And why you put the big star? Because I want them to be fired up. I want them. So I said, Tommy, I'm not trying to insult you or anything, but I need to get these young guys over, and I need to get the show started right when we do these shows. And he said, bro, he had no ego whatsoever like that. Yeah. And he would go out in that first match in Southern Championship Wrestling when we'd go and travel, and he would wrestle a Cassidy or somebody, and they would tear the house down. And then you'd put the guys that didn't know what they were doing in the middle, and then you'd have your main event at the end. But he was so spectacular. And then when we were doing it on TV, I was like, to the guys, would you do the honors for, to help? And Tommy put the guys over. He was happy to do it. But when he put them over, see, there's a difference in putting somebody over. Like, just go first to get beat because well, Tommy, I had a match in Southern Championship. It was a 3.5-4 minute match with him and Hercules. And Tommy kicked the crap out of Hercules for 3 minutes. And Herc cut him off, kicked him, and picked him up with the most beautiful power bomb ever and pinned him 1, 2, 3. I was like, man, what a match. It was so, but it was psychological. There's Tommy, and here's Herc. You know what I mean? So even, little strong and fast and big strong and fast is going to beat little strong and fast every time. And so it was just the way the psychology worked. If it was a real fight, Tommy would get his licks in on Herc. You know what I mean? He would get some shots, but in the end, Herc was going to kill him. Which I don't know what. And it was that psychology. And that's the thing that if there was a way to bring, the cat's out of the bag on everything now. Everybody wants to be a star. I've been to some of these independent guys and man, nobody wants to do the job. And, they all want to, and I hate it. You go to these shows and there's like 20 people and these guys go out and they come up on the ring. There's like 20 people, their mom and their dad, and their kids, and they're, woo! I work at 7-Eleven during the day, but once a month I'm a wrestler. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like, it's so embarrassing. You know what I mean? It's like, God, y'all are, you're killing the business. And that's the thing. Back in the day, and I'll give you a story from my childhood. All I ever wanted to do growing up, my dad's dream was me to go to West Point, which I did, but I didn't stay. But that's a different story. But my junior year in high school, that summer between junior and senior year, man, I was, getting, spitting fire and vinegar and looking to beat everybody's ass I could. I was right. I want to be a wrestler, Daddy. I'm gonna do it. And his friend was the promoter in Alexandria. His name was Charlie D'Amica. Charlie D'Amica presents. And we went down. He said, okay. And he called Mr. Charlie and got me set up. And we went down to the Coliseum on a Tuesday about 1 o'clock. I got to school. And we went down to the Coliseum. And Mr. D'Amica was there, and he and Daddy talked for a minute, and Mike Boyette comes out. And I'm thinking, this old dude, I'm going to beat him like a freaking drum. I was 18. This is going to be easy. We get in the ring. I'm going to tell you like this. It was about 6.7 seconds. He had me down, hooked, his thumb up my ass, my mouth like this, and I'm screaming, Daddy! 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 And then years after my passed off to D'Amica, and we had a talk. I'm an adult now, and I was just starting to get around the business, and he said, your dad brought you down there because the whole idea was to teach you a lesson and discourage you from ever being in wrestling. I said, well, you kind of pretty much did for a while. There's just so many good things. There was another one. I'm telling you, I was looking at him, this guy. But that was the thing back in the day. I mean, it was even like Eddie Gilbert. I'm looking at him and going, hey, dude, I can take it. You know what I mean? I can take that little dude.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have stepped in there. You know what I mean? There's just one of those. Even that time, but man, and now especially on these independent shows, you got people that have no athletic ability or background. Everybody that got into the business back in the day got their nose rubbed in the mat. They didn't go pay some guy and, get their tights and their, you go to these shows, you see the guys with the Wilson knee pads from Walmart, and they're wearing their street, they're not, you have to be a character. You have to be, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to be on stage or in front of people, you can't be one of them. You have to be something a little bit different. And you have to get over it. I'll tell you what over is. All right, here's over. Back in Alexandria, they had the mall, and I'm going to ride with Terry and Tommy and Bobby and me. I'm going to ride with them to a town for Saturday night. I think we were going to go to Jackson or somewhere. In the mall, Terry had to run in and get something. For something I don't remember, and we go in through one of the stores. Well, that day, Channel 5 was having the NBC soap stars, all the stars from Days of Our Lives, and they had like 10 soap stars there, and the mall was full, hundreds, probably. He came out of that store, and it was kind of a lot. And I tell you, a couple of the girls saw, and that turned. It was like eagles, and came and literally started tearing. They were tearing at my stuff. I'm like, oh, what's going on? He's got some and we really had to run out of there and get in the car and leave. And they were still beating on the windows of Tommy's Cadillac, and we were leaving. And I mean, that's how old. Back then, soap operas were a big deal. But the women, you couldn't go anywhere. Anyone went in Dallas territory or the Mid-South territory. It didn't matter where you stopped, nowhere. Everybody piled on you. I mean, it was a level of over that nobody's that over anymore. You know, I watched the event shows. They pipe the crowd noise in. They do the big moves, and you look, and they'll do a big move, and you hear the crowd go, whoa, right? And you look at the picture. Well, everybody's sitting like,
yeah.
It's like, you know, and you listen to the Mid-South or White South tape from the studio or a million times. I mean, those people were left right. When Tommy of a door to hear those little girls scream, when the Rock and Roll Express came out, to hear those little girls scream, when Jim Cornette came out, and to hear the people, the level of hatred and booze, and I mean, like, people really wanted to kill him, dude. I mean, like, there were a lot of people in the beginning that were part of the business, buy a gun and could get clear out. I could take it. And one of the spots before the I-49, they would come to Bucky going north to south. And there was a cheap gas place, and they all knew it and stopped. And so I would, like, hang out there because dog would stop there. You know, the different people. I was waiting, man, because I was, you know, I had a bat in my little truck. I was going to wait for Cornette. He never stopped there. I never saw him. But on those days, I knew where they were going from where to where. Because it was kind of regular. You'd know when the guys would stop him all over town, a small town, and Junkyard Dog was at the biting station. Oh, my God. You know?
Yeah.
And I would sit out. Me and another one of my buddies would go to the wrestling. I was waiting for Jim Cornette. Oh, buddy. I'm going to take Jim Cornette out. Because he's a bad man.
Well, man, we try to keep these to about an hour, so, man, it's flown by. I can't believe it's already been an hour. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I'd love to have you on again in the future. I still got plenty of more questions to ask and things we can discuss. But, man, what a great show it's been.
Yeah, I got 1,000 stories, and you know, the best ones are just me being lucky and getting to travel with Sergeant Slaughter. Me hanging with the Iron Sheik, God rest his soul. Oh, Lolly Bubba, greatest wrestling referee, greatest wrestler, greatest. Shaky, please.
Well, all right, man.
So, I appreciate you. You humbled me, Bubba. You humbled me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, man. It's been a pleasure, and I'll be reaching out again. We'll make this a series, man, because like I said, there's still some more stuff to talk about, and like I said, I've got some more of the Deep South footage I'm going to be putting up here on the channel, and maybe me and Bob Anderson, we do some watch-alongs on here where we play the matches and then kind of talk over and discuss them. So we put some Deep South matches together, and me and you can sit down and watch them, and you can kind of tell us about them and tell us a little bit of the backstory of how some of this came together.
Okay, I'd love to, man. It's awesome. Great. There's some great stories involved in that, of the beginnings and the ends and why they didn't make it, because it was good stuff.
Man, I can't wait to hear it. Well, all right, Lolly, well, take care, brother. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, aloha, my friend.
Take care.